everyone. My name is Nazia Shah, and I'm with AGC of America. I would like to welcome you to the 2025 AGC Convention and to this session, Don't Stress, How Granite Construction Makes Employee Mental Health More Accessible. Before we begin our presentation, I have a few brief announcements. AGC is offering continuing education credits for today's session. To obtain credits, you must have your badge scanned to verify your attendance. Then log into the AGC Connection app, select the session from the agenda, scroll down, and complete the session evaluation. If you don't have your badge yet, that's okay. Once you do, let the folks at registration know that you attended this session and they will add you to it. You can also access speaker slides and handouts, which are available on the app under Session Files. Before we begin the presentation, we ask that you place your cell phones on silent. Now I will turn things over to Stephen Dummit, President of Tradewinds Leadership, and Brandon Carlson, Regional Safety and Health, Environmental and Quality Manager out of Nevada for Granite Construction, to introduce themselves further. Complete bios are also in the app. Welcome, Stephen and Brandon.
Thank you. All right, there's some information about the credits going on. All right, let's introduce ourselves and let you know who's speaking with you today.
I'm Brandon Carlson. I'm the Safety and Health, Environmental and Quality Manager for the Nevada region of Granite Construction. A little bit before we get going here. A little bit about this. So I'm not, just full disclosure, I wasn't super passionate to start with in my career about mental health or really anything in that realm. I found it was a necessity that we had to do because I could see it all around us. I could see it in our teams. I could see it in our people, and I could see that we were not performing the best that we could. Because our teams were struggling a little bit. And so I could see it was definitely something. I was just talking with this gentleman out of Alaska here this morning too. And he, same boat, right? It's just men, rah, men, rah. And it was like, it's an issue, and it's something that we don't talk about much. And it's been a breath of fresh air working with Stephen. I met Stephen through the AGC of Nevada chapter with Craig and the safety committee there in Nevada. And as soon as we met through the AGC safety committee, I was the chairman for a few years, and they kind of introduced us, and it was like an aha moment. It was like, okay, good. Finally somebody to help me with this. So really good thing, but it was something we need to talk about. So anyways, that's who I am.
All right. I'm Stephen Dummit, President of Tradewinds Leadership. Before I got into leadership training and working with Brandon and the AGC, I was actually a contractor myself, electrical subcontractor, a Sparky by trade. So I'm gonna do my best not to forget that I'm wearing a microphone and try to just boom my voice at all of you this whole session. So if it starts getting a little loud, just kind of peer at me a little bit and I'll tone it down. So I love working with companies, with Tradewinds, to do an innovative approach where we do a lot of things through leadership-based training, but it's for craft, and it's for stress management, and it's for the mental health of our trades, of our craft, of our talent. Champion team resilience, and we're going to talk about resilience today and how important of a role that plays in mental health along this continuum from communication to mental health. And got paired up with Brandon probably last September through the AGC. And that has been a great connection. And in putting our heads together and my approach and his approach and what he sees on the ground, we've come up with some pretty awesome ways of trying to tackle this mental health problem that I know we all know is important. We're all aware of it. And we're all trying our own ways to try to figure out how to solve that problem. And we have a new approach today that we're pretty excited to present to all of you. So thank you for having us. All right, we got some learning objectives here, which has all been outlined and it's in the app. So I don't really feel the need to sit here and read an entire slide to you because I think that's going to put a lot of people to sleep. So we don't want to do that. All right, what we do have for everyone though is we are going to be asking some poll questions. So if you do have your cell phone out, even though it's on silent, I appreciate that. Please go ahead, there's a scan QR code right there, or you can join by text. So we thought we'd just dive in with a pop quiz for everybody to get this conversation started this morning. So let's give everyone a second to go ahead and scan that. You should have that first question up there. A few more seconds. I see people still raising their phones. I want to give enough time. We all speak, we all think, we all write at different paces, we all operate technology at much different paces.
This is the first time I've ever worn a microphone.
All right, here we go. So as you're going in, and the question we're asking is, what is the most powerful draw for talent looking at new job opportunities? And we got a live poll going on, so as everyone enters their information, we should see it populate here. Love it when technology works. Okay. We got a battle for second place brewing down there. We'll give about 10 more seconds for everyone to go ahead and respond and see where we get to here. Some Jeopardy music. Anyone got the theme song down? Okay, we won't try to sing to you, I promise. Okay, so as the poll results are coming in, I see a few more trickling in. Maybe people are changing their answers. That's okay. But I'm seeing a resounding result up here for wages and benefits. 50% of this room right now is saying that the most powerful draw for our talent out there, our craft, our trades, is looking at wages and benefits. Would you be surprised to learn that that might not be the number one answer? All right. So let's take a look at what is the number one answer that we have here. And this is according to a Gallup State of the Global Workforce report from 2024, the most recent information that I could find to put together in this presentation. And then the number one thing that talent is looking for is actually not wages and benefits. It's personal well-being at work. This speaks directly to why mental health and stress management is such an issue in the construction industry, in the mining industries, in a lot of other industries. Now, what we're saying is that wages and benefits, we're not saying they're not important. But we're not saying that, what we're saying is that's not the only draw. That the main draw is actually personal well-being. It's their experience from when they clock in to when they clock out. It's their experience about how they feel about work on a Sunday night before they go to work on a Monday morning. That is the biggest draw for talent when they're looking for new job opportunities. Along with wages and benefits and stability and job security, as we see, are tied for second place. So we want to really consider those factors when we're looking at how do we attract and how do we retain the talent that we have. So we got a couple stats about well-being that Brandon's going to run you through right here.
And this part is probably what you guys are used to seeing. Am I right? You guys may have seen this in your organization, your firm. 83% have experienced some form of mental health issue, 1.75 times higher rate of substance abuse than the general population. Number one occupational group nationally for a drug overdose. And 3.5 times as likely to die by suicide compared to the general population. This is the stuff that would kind of drive me crazy. We were just talking about this a few minutes ago. In our industry, we know we have a problem. We know we have a problem. It's time schedules. It's time away from home where it creates stress on the family. Physical stress for our employees. Like we understand we have an issue and we look at these stats. And one thing in construction, we always strive to be number one. And this is the last thing we want to be number one in. This is the last thing we want to be. We're fixers. We're fixers. We're doers. That's what we do. That's construction. We're fixers and we're doers. So when we see these things, and it was frustrating me over the years, I'm like, okay, we get it. We have a problem. I can see it all around us. So how do we, at Granite Construction, how do we jump into this and fix it? Because this isn't right. And we can see it all around us. So, part of Stephen's model is giving us tangible tools to fix it, right? How do you guys currently, how do we address these issues? What do you guys use? Like, what do you guys think right? For Granite, it was an EAP program.
Or how many people, by show of hands, when you see stats like this, think that we go to our EAP as the first step for a solution? Go ahead and put them up high. It's
Yep.
all good.
I'm
It's,
right
it's
there with
cold
you.
in the morning. We don't, we
Yep.
haven't sweat much yet.
EAP, that's what we said. We have an EAP program. It's great.
So let's talk about EAP programs for a minute. We have another question for everyone. So cell phones, if you got them out still, we got one more question for you. Right? So some people are already answering the question. That's great. Right? So EAP programs, when we see stats like 83% of the people in the construction industry have some form of mental health issue. I'm looking around this room, and if there were 100 people in this room right now, which we might be just shy of, that means 80 people in the room. 83 people of 100 people in this room have some form of mental health issue. That could be from PTSD, maybe from a past career. That could be anxiety issues. They could be all kinds of different things related to mental health. And so when we say we have EAP programs, and a lot of companies that we talk to, that I talk to, say we have these very, very robust EAP programs. We start looking into, okay, that's great. And they can talk to counselors and they can talk to therapists, and we have all these different offerings for our employees. But we start looking at what is the average usage rate for employee assistance programs. Has everyone had a chance to pull in, to chime in there? All right. Oh, we got changing answers. I see you going back down.
Backing up.
That's all right. So, looks like the room is saying average usage is 2.9% is the number one answer, with the second place answer of 4.9%. I would say that this room is very right on. They're spot on. Actual answer, on average, is 4.9% usage of the EAP program. So when we think about well-being at work, and we have how many people that are our craft, that are our trades out in the field, how many thousands of people per company, and we're only getting less than 5% usage of the EAP program. I don't know that we're effectively tackling the mental health issue with EAPs alone. Brandon, what was your experience with EAPs?
So I did some digging. Granite construction for salaried staff is at 4%. And we're a pretty progressive company. We have a robust EAP program. The salary staff's at 4%. No, excuse me. Union's at 4%. Salaried staff's at 16% usage of the EAP program. And we've been training around this for 4 or 5 years. And our standard kind of approach to this issue is we have this robust EAP program. We've got these benefits. We've got these things, and it's like the reality is no one uses it, and that's the stigma that comes with it. Is we don't use this, and this, folks in this room might use it. It might be more accessible for you guys, but the reality is for our folks in the field where this stuff makes a difference, is it does not reach the field. It does not reach our craft employees. It does not reach our people. That is not, as soon as you're calling an EAP number, you have a problem. You are HR world. It's not accessible. So part of this approach is, we'll get into it, but part of this approach is just makes it so much more tangible and touchable for people to use these tools.
So really what we did is when we started discovering what Granite's actual EAP usage was and what the national averages for EAP usage was to tackle mental health, we do what we always do in construction. And when there's a problem, you do a root cause analysis and you start working things backward. So we know that we have a problem with mental health in the trades. We're all pretty aware of that. That's why we're sitting here in this room. That's why I thank you all for being here this morning. But when we're doing a root cause analysis, we said, okay, if we're trying to tackle mental health, and a lot of the approaches I see are tackling it head on and using the terms mental health, we started asking ourselves, what are we actually trying to fix? What are we trying to solve? And we got to stress management. And we said that our ability to manage stress at work is a direct correlation to our level of mental health. Okay, great first step, but this is root cause analysis. We got to keep going. So what affects our stress management? Resilience. The resilience of our team, that ability to bounce back against adversity, against unknown change, against the unexpected obstructions that we face. Okay, great. Now we're down to resilience. How do we go about building more resilience within our teams, especially our craft and our trades that are out there in the field in the high stress, high stakes, high pressure, high risk environments? So we went back another step. We said, okay, resilience gets built by teams being better connected with one another. The more connected teams are, like Navy SEALs, the more they rely on each other, the more they lean on each other, the more they can be each other's first line of defense when things are going wrong or when they're having that adversity. Okay, great, but it doesn't stop there. How do we go about building better connection within our teams? And we landed on communication. When we land on communication, we realize that communication is kind of the root of all of it. Better mental health, when you work it all the way backwards, starts with better communication. So I started putting my heads together with Brandon and I said, what kind of training do your field get? Do your craft get? Do the union employees get when it comes to communication? And if you're a lot like Granite and other companies out there, a lot of times when it comes to the field, we're talking about maybe a CPR cert, an OSHA certification, maybe an MSHA certification, and a lot of times it stops right there. All this comes down to management and leadership approach. It's how are we communicating with our teams? How are those field supervisors, those foremen, communicating with their teams? How are they affecting each employee's well-being at work day to day? And that's where we said we can start affecting change from that angle.
So one thing before we move on, I mean, I have a safety brain, safety manager. We're attacking mental health as the end game, right? And it's the one thing that freaks us out. And I'm sure your guys' teams and your guys' employees and people is like, oh, it's suicide prevention. And it's 9 times out of 10, it's not suicide prevention necessarily. It's dealing with this back at the communication piece, which makes a better connected team, builds resilience, helps us manage our stress, which in turn helps our mental health. Does that make sense? Right? Like we're this would be like the outcome is mental health and suicide and all those things. And that's actually what turns our people off. They're like, I'm not a counselor. I don't want to do this. That's not what we're telling them. We're not counselors, we're not any of this, but building better communication and connection in our teams helps with stress management. Right? And these are tangible things. These are things that we can do and practice, and we'll get into this shortly, but these are things that are ongoing practice and work that our field teams need, our craft teams need, because this is where that stuff builds up to. So it's excellent example, right? So a root cause analysis, same as we do as a significant injury or fatality or anything like that, is we'd work it backwards and say, hey, where did this start? It's usually a management issue or a training issue.
Yeah. Our goal was how do we turn it into tangible tools that the craft and trades can take away and walk away with and use? Because a lot of the trades, they're blue collar. They're out there working with their hands. They're working with tools. This is what they're used to doing. This is how they learn. They learn by doing. I came up through the trades. I came up with tool bags on, still wearing my boots here today this morning. This is how I learned, was tangible effects. It wasn't this idea of just pumping information into me. So what we did is we started looking at what is the common approaches that Brandon and Granite were trying and what could we do different?
Ownership. So we typically, and this is just a glimpse into Granite, this is how we do things and this is how we've done them. It was a you problem. Right? The ownership was like, it was, if you need help, it was just call this, here's a little flyer, a business card with an EAP number on it, and here's how we handle this. And it was a you problem. And when we turned around, like we're not going to self-report. Me and this gentleman had this conversation. We're not going to, a bunch of manly men, we're not going to report that. We're not going to say it's a me problem. We're not going to say, hey, let me call the EAP number and do that. No, that's not going to happen. We got to take a different approach to how this works. But yeah.
So when we switch the approach from a me problem, from an individual's problem to a team approach, now it is a collective responsibility. And when we talk about that, this is the culture at work that we experience day to day. How is that team operating? If you have one supervisor, one foreman that has, let's say, 8 people underneath them, that group of 9 can determine their culture and how they operate and what they're willing to tolerate and what's okay and what's not okay. And now it is that team's collective responsibility.
The focus of traditional mental health training, I would tell you guys this very upfront, right? Because I've been trying to tackle this issue for 5 years now. It's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable to talk about. It's uncomfortable to put our people in training. So the way that we frame it, we just gotta be mindful of the way we frame it, and then we gotta be mindful of the way we're accomplishing that. Because it was like I'd send out invites and I'm like, oh, you're coming to mental health awareness training. They'd be like, oh no. We're writing what? We're doing what? Right? Love letters to somebody that if I was gone, I'm like, it's just like, it's stuff that it's not for our people, right? So we just gotta be mindful of that.
Yeah, we had a lot of pushback, like Brandon is saying. When it was said of mental health or leadership, mental health and construction leadership, we tried different titles. Every time it was the same eye roll from almost all of the craft. We gotta go do, like Brandon said, we gotta go do what? It's a mental health training. I don't need mental health. All we did was rebrand it after we did the root cause analysis. And we said, hey, this is communication training. This isn't a training you're gonna go to one time. The example I use is if you're doing a trenching and shoring training. This is excellent training. You need it for safety, so your people can get in and out of trenches, do the work that needs to be done safely and repeatedly. But it only applies when you're working in a trench. A lot of the approaches, this is how they treated mental health. When we branded it as communication training, now it's something they could use all day, every day, on the business clock hours and in the off hours. So with their families at home, with their siblings, their significant others, their kids, how can they learn to communicate better and get a better result and better connection and better relationship with their friends and family outside of work? And those same tools they can now use around the clock.
Timing, if you guys, I'm willing to bet that a lot of you guys probably do computer-based training. It gets sent out annually. Somebody somewhere is looking at some statistics that we've done 70% of our employees have done EAP training or mental health aware, EEO training. It's computer-based training. It's one time. It's a check the box. We're done. We did it. It's not effective. And if anybody has a safety role in this room, you know that's not the way people learn. That's not the way people, especially our field teams, comprehend information. You can't just sit down at a computer. Like most people have to come to our office to use the Wi-Fi to click through the training to say it's done because they get auto reminders and all this stuff from Workday or whatever it is, that their training's lapsed. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. That's especially around this topic. Especially around this topic and building teams is like computer-based. That's the kind of the problem we're facing is the traditional way we've done this training is like, oh, just sit at your computer and just do this training. And if you need help, call this number.
Well, we changed that to where we're doing workshops. We're doing on-site training. We're getting them together in groups. So essentially we're saying, here's a concept and let's talk about it. Here's how it's real to us. How is it real to you in the field? What have you experienced that you could apply this idea to? And we get these field teams that work together, talking together in a group. And that's where that experience sticks.
The approach, the past approach is formal. It's HR driven. Me and Stephen first started working together, I had 6 slides that were put together by Granite's HR department. And it was like, it's exactly what you guys would expect. It's HR slides. And so when you're like, oh yeah, just call this number. And people are like, no, not doing that.
So when we switch it from an HR-driven, formal-driven slide that wasn't connecting with our craft, it wasn't connecting with the field, and let's turn it into experiences that are real to them, that they face day in and day out. Now they're talking about something that they know about. It's real situations from the field, real experiences.
I had, a subject matter expert, I had He's a good friend of mine. His name's JP. He's a psychologist. And once I started noticing, I'm like, this is we got issues. We got to figure this out because our teams are struggling. And it was day in and day out. And it really affects safety is why it was passionate to me, because it boils down your personnel issues and your mental issues and things like that on the job. It boils down at the end of the day, if you don't have a good team, it boils down to safety issues on the job. Quality issues, production issues, it boils all the way down. It's just not a good team environment. So I had my buddy come in. His name's JP, and he shows up, and I was like, oh, this is gonna be great. He's a psychologist. He's gonna come in here, and it was my 6 Granite slides around mental health, EAP numbers, crisis hotline, that type of thing. And he shows up and he's in a suit. It was a train wreck. It was a train wreck. Like, it's not relatable. He shows up in a suit and he's a doctor, and our people are like, you know? So the facilitator, the approach, it's a big deal.
It's a big deal. And so what we saw was that disconnect when this psychologist walks in. It's a subject matter expert, but they're a suit. The people from the field and the craft with their jeans and their boots are saying, I can't relate to that guy. I may have never worn a suit. So the difference is when I'm up there facilitating, I come from the trades. I come from construction, electrician, Sparky by trade, and they can sniff that out very, very quickly. They very quickly learn in the first 15 minutes that I am not a suit, that I am one of them. And believe me, they challenge, they ask questions, they try to debunk me right away. But as soon as they realize that I'm not one of them, I'm like, I'm in. Let's talk about this. Does everyone in this room want to go ahead and leave with some cool new communication tools? How many people would like to repeat instructions to their crews less? How many people would like to get more done with less words? And every single hand goes up. I'm like, awesome. Let's lean in. Let's do this together, because I was much like you one day and I didn't know any of these skills. And when I started learning these skills and applying them, I was able to elevate my life and have a better experience at work. And if that's what you want, they lean in.
Point being, the awareness campaigns, we've talked about it. We've made the point. We know it's an issue, but we're not doing anything. We're not doing anything about it. And the awareness is great. It needs to happen. That's a start. But at some point, we've got to move on, and we got to give our folks some tangible tools to be able to deal with these things and give them some communication tools and leadership.
What it really came down to is when they're clicking through a screen and that's not how they learn, the awareness is met, but none of that is sticking. Like we said, they made the point, but it didn't change behavior. When we start attacking it from a communications angle and a connection angle, these are tools they can use. And now we see them putting that into practice almost immediately. And that does start to change the behavior and change the culture of these teams. And it's team by team, 10-person group by 10-person group. And it can go through and ripple through an entire company. So let's kind of keep going and show you exactly a little bit. This is a high-level overview of what we put together, Brandon and I, for his Granite cruise in Northern Nevada. So we're going to go through this kind of quickly, but I just want to let you know this is the program that we put together. We call it Leaders Do More. Model, observe, respond, and empower. We want to put this together in a way that was tangible and accessible to the craft and to the trades and to the talent out there. So we made it easy metric for them to follow, an easy framework for them to follow, and we're going to go through it real quick here. So the first one we have is model. It's basically, what do you hear me saying? What do you see me doing as a field leader?
This portion, when Stephen did this training for us, you could hear a pin drop in the room for our folks, right? And this is changing the mindset of, in construction, we're typically always, who's the person in charge? Who's the person, right? And changing the framework to the people in my charge and who they're taking care of, and going through the four needs of a team: trust, compassion, stability, and hope. You could almost hear a pin drop, because this is what they expect out of Granite. This is what they expect out of management. is the four needs of a team. These are things that they expect. So when you flip the script a little bit and you said, this is what to Stephen's point, your crew of 8 or 10, this is what they expect of you. This is what they need. And it was like, oh, aha, kind of moment. And this is a tangible tool that they could take away. And this is how I take care of people in my charge. This is a different frame of thinking about it.
Exactly. So next up, we have observe. And observe is really about, are we paying enough attention to our teams to know what normal is for each of our team members so that we know when someone is acting outside of that normal. Now, a lot of time when we talk about mental health and we're talking about suicide prevention, we see a lot of slides like this. So we're gonna go ahead and include one for you, right? Traditional signs of stress, signs of team stress, signs of individual stress, and every single bullet point that is up there is accurate. And I could probably put up about 15 more slides that look just like this with all different bullet points, and every single one of them would also be just as accurate. The problem there is that when you're in the field, in your craft, in your trade, or even if you're in the office, how am I to remember 15 slides worth of information? I don't know the 150 signs that I need to pay attention to see if someone's in trouble or not. Or am I going to pull out my reference flip note that I keep in my wallet? Oh, are they seeing one of these signs? So how can we take that and boil it down, distill it down into just a general take that lets the teams in the field and the office use it without having to go through a flip chart or 15 different slides? And I'm gonna let Brandon take you through what we did there.
Because that last slide, that's our traditional training. Is to Stephen's point. Here's 15 signs of stress. Blah blah blah. People are like, what do we do with construction workers every day? So there's all of those every day, all the time. One thing that brought it home for us is this check engine light theory. Simple analogy, simple theory that really hit home with our people, right? You guys all deal with expensive equipment. If we have a brand new D9, D10 bulldozer, and it's throwing codes, it's check engine lights on, what do? We go through steps. We go through a lot. There's mechanics dispatch, there's a cat rep out there. Probably cat rep in here today, maybe. Right? There's people that respond. It's a $500,000 piece of equipment. They come out to check on this thing. And so one thing that kind of was a dawning moment for us is like, what do we do? Our people are our most valuable asset. Our people make us money. They make us productive. They make us safe. They're leaders. They get the job done. Our people are our most valuable asset. What do we do when our people's check engine light's on? Nothing. We have nothing. We don't do anything. We're like, call it EAP number 988. What? So this is an easy takeaway for our teams. That was like the check engine light theory. I got hard hat stickers made a few weeks after that. Everybody's got on their hard hats now. It's like, hey, just know if your check engine light's on. Those signs of stress, that 19 pages of things that could be wrong with a human, right? It's just check engine light. Is your check engine light on? If you got 10 people in here, you might have 1 or 2 with the check engine light on. And it's time to check in with them.
Simple analogy was just that when you have a piece of equipment with a check engine light and it happens, we stop using that equipment and we get it serviced. And once you service that equipment, it's back into production, it's back in usage, and you get another 10, 15, 20, 30 years out of that same piece of equipment. People are the same way. If you recognize what is normal for your team, if Brandon takes 15 minutes to walk across this room because he's got to smile and say hi to everybody on the way through, and that's Brandon's normal, and then he shows up one day and he puts his head down and he beelines it right through the crowd, doesn't say hi to anyone. I don't know if that's on my 15 slides, but to me, that's a check engine light. He's not acting normal. I got to go have a check-in with Brandon and just, hey, something seems off for you today. What's going on? So that takes us right to our next point of the more framework that we have, right? Is how do we respond to our crews? How do we respond to them when we see that they're acting outside of this normal, when we think they have a check engine light on, right? So we put together this quick check-in framework fast, so that way they have a tangible tool. with the trades, a lot of times we give them ideas, we give them concepts, but tradesmen, craft, and your talent, they're tool people. Tell them how to do it. That's all they're looking for, and they'll put it into practice. Fast is how you do it. So we're gonna run through it quickly. F, find a time and place.
And to me, this resonated. So like how many times it's usually at a safety meeting in the morning, where if somebody is having maybe an issue or something's going on, is the foreman or the superintendent or somebody addresses it in front of their peers right in the morning in the safety meeting in front of 20, 40 people, right? Not the right time and place to do that.
Yeah, find the right time and place. Pull them aside. Talk to them for 1 minute outside of the safety meeting. Hey, can I see you for 5 minutes at next break? Hey, why don't you walk with me to the truck real quick and get this tool? You can make it really informal, but go ahead and not put them on blast in front of everybody, right? Pull them aside. That's all we're saying. Next up, ask open-ended questions.
When we went through this, I think, what did we do, 2 minutes?
2 minutes.
2 minutes of asking open-ended questions. So it'd be like me and you, repetitively asking open-ended questions to each other and trying to carry on a conversation, asking open-ended questions to ask better questions, right? That's the point of the drill. Super funny to do with our people. Super funny to do. It's really hard to ask open-ended questions for 2 minutes straight. For myself, for anybody. And so you're trying to tease these things out and get more information out of people. But those are real world tools that our field leaders and supervisors, project managers, they need that. And they're of the mind, a lot of times, like Stephen said, our craft people are builders. They just want to know how to do it. Our project managers, super analytical. They don't want to know anything but X, Y, and Z. Right? So asking opening questions, it was phenomenal exercise practice.
Yeah. For example, when you get home from work or you ask your spouse or significant other, or if you have kids, you ask your kids, normal question you're going to ask them at the end of the day is, how was your day? Right? How many people are used to getting a 4-letter answer? Good, okay, fine. If they're really feeling spicy, maybe all right? 6 letters, okay, well. Right? So by learning to ask open-ended questions, hey, it seems like something is troubling you. What's the biggest obstacle you're facing? They can't say fine, okay, or good, or a yes or no question. That's open-ended questions. Which takes us to S, shut up and listen.
Super hard for construction folks. Super hard, including myself. I'm a talker. Everybody's a talker and a doer, and that is what it is. So just to tell our people to shut up and listen, first of all, it kind of slapped them in the face a little bit. They were like, okay, shut up and listen, okay. And then when you practice it, you're like, okay, stop talking. You're a talker, and you kind of blow the doors down with talking and everybody's opinion and blah, 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 construction people. Shut up and listen. And it had a big impact on our folks where it's like, okay, listen to your people that are talking to you. They're telling you what's going on. They're telling you things. They're telling you information. And you got to shut up and listen. I know that sounds silly for me to tell you guys that, but it's pretty awakening. Yeah.
It works. And it's meant to be a bit abrasive.
Yeah.
And that connects with construction.
It also works,
right?
Yep.
Which takes us to the last letter of the FAST framework, T. Tee up a follow-up. And to me, this is the most important letter in the framework. Because when you have a check-in with somebody, and now we've given these crews an example of how to do that, again, make it tangible. It says that I care about you as a human now. When you tee up a follow-up, whether that's, hey, can I check in with you tomorrow at this time? How about Monday morning, can you swing by my truck or my trailer real quick? It says I care about you now, and I care about you in the future. And that's a huge piece to people's mental health and feeling that they're part of a team and feeling that they're connecting with another human. So when we get to the T, we have a couple things that we run through real quick though, in case it is something outside of the norm or it's maybe a more extreme situation. So we give them the stoplight method to follow up. So everyone knows a stoplight, right? We got green, we got yellow, and we got red. Most times when we're having a check-in with our crews, it's something that's going on, it's a one-time incident, Maybe they got a speeding ticket on the way to work. They got in a fight with their spouse that morning. It's something that's just heavy on their brain that day, that if they just get that 2 minutes to have a check-in, and Brandon asks me what's going on, then he asks an open-ended question, he shuts up and listens, and I can just vent that thing out. We probably all have that experience where we had a rough day at work, everything went wrong. And when you get home, you get to your spouse, significant other, and you say, I just need you to listen for a minute. You don't even have to respond. And you just spill the dump truck for 2 minutes. How much better do you feel? Right? Well, it's all not along because we all feel a lot better doing that. A lot of times that's what our people need. Now, Brandon, what would you say, how often is a green issue?
I would say 95%.
Right.
95%, this is the check engine light. Check engine light's on. Just got to follow up, touch base, human to human, check in with them, use that FAST model, which is a very tangible tool that our people can use. We're not trained professionals, but we follow the FAST model and a check engine light's on, 95% of our issues are in the green.
So we let people know you're not there to solve problems. You're just there to listen. And the ideal outcome, the people feel heard, the follow-up is planned. And that's all we're going for. Now, those other 5% of the times, it might be a yellow light. Maybe it's a more chronic issue. Maybe it's we've had repeated check-ins with this one person because they're still struggling or they're still having a hard time. Okay, great. This again, now we're telling them you still don't have to solve the problem. But maybe this is where you could help direct them to HR or an EAP. Maybe the problem is bigger than just the connection in the field with my team, that we actually need to bring a professional in. The EAPs are still super important, highly important. Mental health professionals, stress management professionals, therapists, coaches, counselors, all critical in their jobs. And sometimes they're needed. And if they're needed and it's something beyond what I can solve with my team in the field, because I'm not solving anything, I'm just listening, but I hear that they need help, I can direct them now to the EAP. And then of course, with every stoplight, we all know the one that we don't like. That's a red stoplight, right? This is when it's an urgent crisis. So I'm Safe Talk certified, I'm Assist certified, mental health first aid certified. Suicide prevention is very important to me and real in my life. And so we can't have a check-in without potentially talking about it. And this is gonna occur less than 1% of the time. And again, we train these field foremen, these field leaders, you still do not solve the problem. You still are not the professional. But if you assess that someone is actually in crisis, that you think it's a real situation, there's real danger, all we're telling them to do is just don't leave that person alone until someone else can get there that is a professional, or you can at least hand them off to the next supervisor or HR. Just don't leave them alone. This is empowering these teams to now have these fast check-ins, to have these check engine-like conversations without feeling like they need to be educated or need to be doctors or need to be professionals in mental health. But this is what you can do. Again, tell them how and they will go execute.
Resonated super well because that exactly that is we, and either in your current training or past training, certainly for Granite, when we did this training, it was like you were the counselor, you were the coach, you were the person. This just stoplight method and the fast check-in method gave our people a framework to say, okay, here's how I can deal with a situation on the job. And it's very simple stoplight method, yellow, call safety, HR, get help, get somebody else involved. 95% of our issues are in the green. And if we use some of these tools up front, we don't get to the red. And this is what drove me crazy about it, and root cause analysis and all these other things that we deal with in construction. I'm like, why are we always talking about the red? Why are we always over here in the far spectrum of the red? That doesn't make sense. Like, what is happening? So if we deal with these things in the green and we're upfront about it and we have human-to-human connections and communication, we prevent it from getting the red. To me, this is the, you guys have all seen the kind of old school near miss triangle where it's like 300 near misses, 30 significant near misses, 1 serious incident or fatality, you know what I mean? So it's same process.
So all this is leading us to the last letter of our framework for more, right? Empower. How do we empower our teams? And when we're talking about empowering our teams, empowerment really means removing the fear. When you look at the definition of stigma, and we talk about stigma in mental health all of the time, Stigma is the fear of consequences. It's a fear of consequence that I won't be promoted. I won't make it to management. I'll be thought of as less than. I'll be thought of as weaker than I am or not enough because I have this issue where I need to seek out help of some kind. We want to remove that fear. So we're going to give you a couple quick examples.
And you guys have all seen these, right? I don't want anyone knowing I'm getting help. And the reality is that most professionals, most executives, all have some sort of professional coaching or help in some form or fashion.
Or maybe you hear a phrase, real leaders don't need mental health, right? I see a couple smiles out there. I was recently doing a mental health facilitation in the Bay Area, and we had one gentleman in the front said, well, I would want to know if anyone on my team needs to go seek a counselor or a therapist out because I don't think they'd be management material if they can't handle the stress. Before I could even ask a question to this gentleman, because I was now very curious where his answer came from, a gentleman in the back of the room said, well, I did, and I reached out, and I got a hold of our EAP, and I started talking to a therapist 2 months before I got my promotion to manager. Insert foot in mouth to the guy in the front row. I didn't even have to say anything as a facilitator, and the room handled the whole situation. So that's kind of our point here is let's remove the fear that real leaders don't need mental health. To me, that gentleman that said, I recognize that I need help and I'm going to go seek it, or someone on my team might need help, that's a person that I want as a management. That's a person that I want as a leader.
People just need to show up and do their job. That's probably the most common thing that we all hear. Just do your job. You're just paid to be here, do your job. We can't, like, this is the whole kind of crux of the issue is people need to show up to a good environment to do their best job, right? Like you have to show up to a good job, to a good team to be able to do your best job. This doesn't work anymore. It's 2025. This doesn't work.
This is the big one that we hear all the time. We don't have time for this on the job site. When the reality is, if you don't make time for your people now, it will catch up. That time investment will happen at some point in the continuum of the job, of the employment of the company. So let's invest on the front end before it becomes a yellow light or a red light, because those take a lot more time to solve. If there's an incident on a job site, that shuts the job site down for what? A day, 2 days, 3 days? We got to inspect it. We got to figure out what happens. We have a lot of reports. All that could save a whole lot of time if we address it on the front end. So this whole idea that we don't have time is you will invest the time at some point. Better to do it now.
Leader, mentor, dad didn't need this stuff. The reality is that they did need it, whether they got it or not in some form or fashion. They needed it. So really, these are all kind of antiquated things, but we hear these all the time, every day on our jobs, and it's we got to move past it. And if we remove the fear and the stigma around it, then people are more willing to reach out.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk a little bit about why this approach works. And really what it comes down to is management and leadership in the field. Managers have as much impact on their employees' mental health as a spouse or a partner. 70% of people responded that way, that my manager at work has as big an impact on my life as my partner. That's huge. So this is why this approach works, because if you can start to invest in that manager and how they communicate and connect with their team, you're directly addressing that well-being stat that we started with this morning. Their experience at work starts to improve. Managers account for at least 70% of the variance in employee engagement. How engaged an employee is at work is a measure of how effective and productive they are. The more engaged the employee, the more they're going to lean in, the more productive they're going to be, the more they're going to look out for their team, the more safety incidents they're going to see on the front end and call out so we don't have to have an issue there. We want to keep employee engagement at an all-time high, and managers are the number one change in that. Managers are largely disengaged, with only 35% engaged in their roles. This comes down to how much training they get. And what I mentioned earlier was when Brandon and I put our heads together and we discovered that for a lot of people, the craft and the trades and the talent that are out in the field are not getting, we're getting bright lights, but they're not getting that same training, right? They're getting their CPR, they're getting the MSHA, they're getting the OSHA cert every other year. When you start to invest in managers and their training, you start to see a change. right? So teams with highly talented managers achieve 48% higher profitability, 22% greater productivity, and 30% better employee engagement scores as teams with less talented managers. And this is, again, another Gallup survey. This is really kind of the point that we're trying to make in a lot of this training that Brandon and I put together. As a lot of companies say, why is personal well-being my responsibility as a company? And why, as a company, how do I affect, if I have 8,000, 10,000 field employees, how am I to personally affect and change 10,000 lives? And our point is that it's only your responsibility to start training the management, because that management will then affect all of the personal well-being of the employee experience day to day. And that's what our talent is looking for. They're looking for wages and benefits. Yes, we know that. And they're looking for that experience at work, that personal well-being day to day. They want to be excited on Sunday night to go to work on a Monday morning with their team, because they're there with a purpose to help support their team and take care of those in their charge. And this is really the point that we want to impress upon you, is that as companies, as Granite is a company, when they start to invest in the field leaders, in the field management, they start to change all this. Now, I know a lot of people might be saying, okay, this is great. And something I hear all the time is, well, you don't understand our industry. Oh, construction is a little bit different. Construction is very different, except I do understand your industry because I come from that industry myself. I am construction. But what we do have is we have some stats that are specific to the construction industry that we want to go ahead and share with everybody as part of this presentation.
And one thing, just to dovetail on Stephen's point, is it 100% starts with the leadership. Like, the leadership has to buy in, the leadership has to practice these things, and it's a trickle-down effect. It's not train the employees. Train the employees. And it has to start with the leadership and modeling and going through this whole framework. It 100% starts with the leadership. And the industry won't change. Those stats that we showed at the beginning of the presentation, the industry won't change unless the leaders change. And that has to resonate down through our field teams and the whole nine. All right. So 15 to 20% boost in productivity, 25% reduction in rework and errors. What does that sound like? This, in my mind, all of these numbers, this sounds like safety incidents. This sounds like quality incidents, budgeting, scheduling conflicts, things like that happen because the human element is not there, right? 5.5% budget savings per job and a 10-15% reduction in project delays. That's all safety, quality, maybe environmental issues and things like that because of the human element. If you have leadership on your teams and you have a well-oiled human machine, it provides these numbers. So I'm a firm believer in that. So quick story, working with Stephen. So we have a project superintendent. He's like your stereotypical old school hardcore construction. Feelings don't matter. Show up, do the job, right? Nobody says anything to him. He's hardcore construction guy. And so I was working with Stephen. He went to this training. He was especially around this topic. He was actually paying attention quite a bit, taking notes and things like that. I go to his safety meeting a couple days later, 3-4 days later, and I could tell he was using these, he was asking open-ended questions to his crew. There's 25, 30 people around. He's asking open-ended questions. He's practicing a lot of these tools that we were giving him. The safety meeting was super engaging. People are speaking up. Hey, what did we do yesterday? Okay, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. And they're communicating well as a team, right? That's real world mental health. That's what makes a difference. That's a needle mover in our industry. Not EAP hotlines, and that stuff's important. I don't want to downplay that, but that's the red. That's the stoplight. That's the red. We're operating in the green. And he comes out and he's like, you could tell he had kind of rehearsed the safety meeting. He's doing a great job. People were buying in, they're talking, they're like, oh yeah, people were laughing. It was a good day to be at work. I hate going to safety meets. I hate it. It's one of those things, I'm sure all you guys have to do that. You got the one guy, you're like, oh, here we go. Yeah, what are we gonna get in for today? Yeah. That's him, right? And so like doing these things and going through this, you know what I mean? He's using these tools. He's working with these. That is real for us. So the old kind of approach and the computer-based training and check the box and EAPs and the brochure that we send out, great. But if you want to move the needle and you want to move this topic, you got to think of a different approach, and you got to have a different training approach. You got to have a different tactic, and that's what we've done here. So I think it's a tremendous, you know, and I'd urge you guys. I know we're all competitive. We're all in construction. I'd leverage your competitive nature at your organization to move this needle, because it's impacting you right now at your organization. It is 100% impacting you, whether you want to realize it or not. So if you want to move the needle in this direction, look at how you're doing the training and look at what your options are for doing it differently.
Well said.